Matter movement had a huge ripple effect across the country for greater good and inclusivity. And I want to really know, how did that affect the curriculum in your school in East Cleveland?
Yeah, so I think it had a huge impact on the choices that they made. Of course, being at a school and in a district that serves predominantly students of color, they do make a really big choice to have, they have systems within the district that deal with this. They have people who are designated to do this job of like putting out statements to the news about where the CEO and where, you know, our school district stands on Black Lives Matter, and they've always been supportive of it from the start. I can't tell you how many emails and phone calls and messages I received from my district saying like, hey, pay attention, this is happening and this is where the district stands. And as a teacher of mostly Black students, it's definitely encouraging to see that that is being supported, but saying that you support it and doing something about it is a very different thing. Curriculum, for those that are not familiar, is basically a map. It is an outline of this is what you need to teach your kids at this level to be successful for the next step, whether that next step is the next grade or college or trade school or, you know, work, whatever it is they decide to do. And so we are preparing our kids in a way to be prepared for so much more than we've ever had to prepare them for before, because we're now talking about 21st century learning, which is digital learning. And that was obviously something that we saw was a big gap that we had with our kids. And so the district made a choice to purchase a brand new curriculum on top of teaching everything online, and said, here you go, with no training.
Just jump right in.
I did get a tiny little bit of training of like, this is what the curriculum looks like, and this is how you can teach it, and this is like what it's made of. My first thought immediately was, I'm not going to have enough time to teach all of this. There's just no way.
There's lots to unpack there.
There's a lot there, and the reason why I thought that was because I knew that every single year what happens is I get at least a month or two lost because of standardized testing, which last year they got rid of in the state of Ohio because of the pandemic, and we were hoping against hope that they would get rid of it this year. Instead, they forced us to open our school buildings because of it. So we are testing, and as a result, I am losing weeks of instruction time.
Yeah.
And because of attendance issues and digital tech issues, you know, it's just like you hear a lot of educators saying that the kids are so behind, they're falling so behind, they're so behind, oh, it's going to have a long-term effect. And then people are like, no, you can't say that they're falling behind because they're surviving, they made it through a pandemic. And I try to think positively, because as an educator, and especially for my kids, I want them to not feel like we see them in a light of deprivation. Like, I feel like a lot of the time we're always telling the kids that they're not enough. You're not enough. It's not their fault, really, that they don't know what they don't know. I mean, to a degree, yes, at a certain age, they can seek out the information, but it is our job as educators to give them a little door into that information. And I can't even tell you how many times I have conversations just about life and things that I've experienced that kids are like so interested in. Like today, I don't even know how it came up, but I started talking about SeaWorld. Oh, because I had them write a journal entry about what is your dream vacation spot.
Yes.
The one girl was like, I want to go to SeaWorld, and I was like, oh, did you know that there used to be a SeaWorld in Ohio? And
yes.
She was like, Aurora. I found that. I didn't know it was in Aurora.
Oh my goodness.
And so we're talking about that, and we're looking about it, and I was like, well, actually, they closed it. Why did they close it? Well, because of the whole issue with the killer whale. Well, what happened with the killer whale? So then I'm telling them about the killer whale and about Blackfish and the documentary, and next thing I know, I'm going on a tangent. I'm like, this has nothing to do with what I'm teaching. But sometimes those like real life, like teaching, we call them teaching moments.
Yes.
Because that information, even though it wasn't my curriculum, was information that's useful for my kids. And they were all like We were like, what? But the curriculum this year is much better than any I've had in the past, because it has stories that my kids can see themselves in, and also just like stories that are like world culture oriented. I read a story about children in the war in Sudan with my 7th graders, and they were just floored with all the information. And that's a area I happen to know a lot about because I have gone on some trips to Haiti, and I know about their world countries and the wars that are still to this day going on. And see, what I do as an educator, and what all of us do as educators, you would hope, is they give us a lesson plan in the curriculum, and depending on where you teach, you have to follow it. You might have a principal or a school leader who's going to come and watch your classroom, and they're going to be like, you need to be following the curriculum like this. You need to be doing exactly what it says. You need to be teaching all parts of it. As educators, we make mindful choices about what parts are we going to take out, what parts do we need to break down more to fill in the gaps, because especially for our kids in Cleveland, they have a lot of gaps. Like, the average reading level, and I'm being generous here, for my 8th graders is probably around 5th grade. So I have to recognize that any reading that they're doing, I'm going to have to pre-teach vocabulary. A lot of them don't have a lot of exposure to the world outside of their neighborhood. So if it's talking about Sudan, the first thing I'm going to do is get out a map.
Yeah.
Do you know where Sudan is? What do you think Sudan looks like? What are your preconceived notions of what Africa is like? Well, this is what Africa can look like. Have you heard of South Africa? This is what South Africa looks like. And then that gets them interested, because the important thing is, if the kids aren't interested in what they're learning about, they're not going to learn. That's anybody. Right. Nobody wants to learn about something that's boring.
Nope.
And so,
you're not going to get attention.
No, and so they tell you all the time as a teacher, you need to connect it to real life, and that's why project-based learning is so important. But our curriculum is not really necessarily project-based. It is a lot of reading and evidence and nonfiction and stuff that can get very dry very quickly. So I supplement it a lot with I'm a very creative person, and I like to bring in music. I like to bring in videos, short documentaries, because our kids are very, their attention spans, we know, are short, and they're used to seeing things like videos and just like short clips of information.
With the TikToks.
Yeah, they get that like instant gratification all the time.
Yeah.
So if you don't get them immediately interested, then you've lost already.
Yeah.
So it's like a performance. Like, I'm like, how am I going to get this audience to listen to me today and hear what I got to say and care about what I've got to say? And so I always have to like treat it as like, okay, what? And then I look at a lesson and I say, okay, I've got to teach this lesson today. What areas are my kids going to struggle in? And I know my kids, and I know their test scores, and I know the data, and I know them because I've worked with them, especially the ones that I've had for a couple of years. So I can make educated decisions about, okay, you know what, we're not going to have enough time, even in a 90-minute class, to write a 5-paragraph essay. We're going to have to take this and break it down. I'm going to have to take this essay apart and do it with them. I'm going to have to do sentence starters. I'm going to have visuals. I'm going to have things be hands-on and get them like down and dirty with it, because just saying, hey, here's your prompt, go write the thing.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
They immediately shut down, especially with writing, because they haven't had a lot of success with it. And I think for me, what I like to do to get that like social emotional learning aspect in, which I do love this curriculum because it does build that in. There's a lot of conversations about character traits and what makes somebody a good person, and what is like respect, and what does that mean, and what does that look like. And I try to do like daily journals that allow kids to write about it and give them multiple ways to express their views, because sometimes they don't feel comfortable sharing it out loud in a group.
Right, yeah.
But they might be comfortable in a small group. They might be comfortable writing about it. They might be comfortable drawing about it. And so the curriculum was changed, and I think in large part in response to the Black Lives Matter, because they're like, oh, the one we had before, made a lot of assumptions about our kids. Like, for example, in a math problem, you might have a word problem that says, take the perimeter of this white picket fence. And they're like, what is that? What does that mean? So, like, you've got to create scenarios that make sense to our kids and
make it relatable. Mm-hmm.
Make it relatable so that they can see the importance of the education too.
Absolutely.
And I can't tell you how excited they get when they are able to see what we're learning out in their world, and then they come back the next day and they're like, "Oh my gosh, Miss Lim, I saw this TV show over the weekend, and they were talking about this, and it was just like you said, and it was just like we talked about," and I'm like, Yes, you
Those
were
are happy
listening.
teacher moments.
They're far and few between.
But you know what? When you get them, it's like, oh my gosh, it's the best thing ever.
That's what I'm here for. That's like that's what I live.
Yes.
That's like my drug. I'm like, please give me more. Like, I need more of that. It's so hard because it's so hard to get kids engaged in a curriculum when it's virtual learning, and so that's been a challenge too because this was not a designed curriculum that was meant to be taught over. No curriculum really is designed to be virtual. It's just kids need to be able to play with things, especially the younger kids. They need tactical stuff. They need to be able to do projects. They need to be able to work with each other, see each other, say it out loud, see each other's faces. So that's been an interesting journey this year, and I feel constantly like I am not doing enough to get this curriculum. I love to bring in people.
Yeah.
I happen to have a pretty large network of people that I know that love Cleveland and love the kids and want to invest in them. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to bring this program in. I'm going to bring this person in to talk to them.